Good morning. These guys were really cool. In 1982, I was 10 years old, and I was living in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, which is where I'm from. And it makes these guys even cooler when you're from what we consider to be the South. But there was something happening every Friday night, CBS, 7 p.m. Central Time, and it was this. Now, this is two cousins, Beauregard and Lucas Duke, better known as Beau and Luke Duke, who had lost their parents, and they had to go live with this relative, Uncle Jesse, who lived in Hazzard County, Georgia. They had another cousin, and I'm not going to mention her, but they had the coolest car in the world. It was a 1969 Dodge Charger. It was painted orange. Had these awesome numbers on the side. The doors were welded shut, so they had to actually climb through the window to get in the car to get away from the cops or the bad guys. It was an awesome show. We're talking like explosive arrows, goofy cops, a dog named Flash, a guy named Cooter. To a 10-year-old kid, it was really fun. And this was me every Friday watching this show. I was glued to my set. The entire neighborhood disappeared at this time on Friday nights. And we were all sitting in front of our TVs. And in 1982, we were waiting for the premiere of season 5. And so I tune in, and what do I see? I see these guys. And for those of you who don't know who these guys are, well, neither did I. This is Coy, and this is Vance. Maybe it was Vance and Coy, but it's really irrelevant. Whoever they were, it was not something that I had anticipated as a viewer, but there they were. Now, these are the real guys. These are the cool guys. This is Beau and Luke, and they felt like they weren't getting paid by CBS, and so they went on strike. And CBS said, you know what, go for it. We're not going to pay you. We're comfortable with replacing you. Now, at the time, the show was number 6 in the nation. It was a popular show. I think maybe the only other show that was more popular at the time was Dallas, and Dallas was pretty cool too. Anyway, so CBS had to adjust the storyline. They had to explain what happened to Beau and Luke, but rather than actually do that, they introduced these new characters and kept the story going. So they bring these two characters onto the show, but they were bozos, and I didn't like this show. And this is what happened to this is what happened to the Dukes. This is where they died. They died for me. Now, CBS had to adjust the storyline to address this, because Beau and Luke were the stars of the show. I would also say that the General Lee was the star of the show as well. But their storyline change was to say that Beau and Luke went to run the NASCAR circuit. So if you guys aren't familiar with the NASCAR circuit, it's this race car circuit. They go around, they race cars in circles. It's kind of boring. But they went to go do this. And this is what CBS suggested had happened. But there was a problem with that storyline. And this is really at the point where I stopped watching the show, because they lied. They lied to all of their viewers. They couldn't leave Hazzard County, and that is Beau and Luke, because they were on probation for running Uncle Jesse's moonshine. So how in the world are they going to run the NASCAR circuit all over the country? It just doesn't make any sense, especially to this 10-year-old kid who's just glued to the show. I was totally devastated. Maybe not like this, but I stopped watching the show. Eventually, later on in the season, Beau and Luke, they came back. They came back to the show, and the show continued, but the damage was done. The show was number 6, dropped out of the top 30 by the end of season 5. They lost all their viewers. They made a massive change to their product. And that is what I suggest, what we can learn from the Duke boys. Now, if you're gonna, so what they had done is they had made this massive change to their product, to the stars of their shows, to the stars of the show, and that is what I believe we're going to learn from them. And I'll walk you through that in just a second. But this is a user experience conference, and we get together. We get product people and we get designers, and we talk about user experience. And what we typically talk about is research, and I love to talk about research. And we're always talking about who did you talk to, when did you talk to them, what tools did you use, how frequently did you talk to them, what stage did you change the conversation, how many questions do you ask, how much time do you meet with them, how much time do you spend with them in a day. We're not talking about research now. We're going to be talking about the release, because I'm going to suggest to all of us here, especially to the designers in the room, that the release of what you're researching and what you're building with your team is just as important as the research side. Now, they can't be uncoupled. You have to do both. But they're both very important. And throughout my career, I would argue that a lot of the designers, this is where you stop being engaged. But this is where it's most critical, because the release is the packaging of your product. It's how your users get it. That's how they receive it. And that's why I suggest that it's really important for all of us to be aware of it and focus on. So I work for Pluralsight. I'm very fortunate. And that means we use directed discovery. And I'm going to walk you through a case study of what we recently did in a major release for our business just a couple of weeks ago, and how we did it. And this is part of that directed discovery story. If there were two parts, and there's more parts than two, but if there were two parts, you have the research side, then you have the release side. And this is kind of the release side. This is the way that we typically do it at Pluralsight. We've got a reporting tool. And I mentioned, obviously, Pluralsight. I work with the team that's responsible for delivering the business experience. So let me give you a scenario. Our persona is Pete. Pete buys 100 licenses for his company. And Pete allocates those licenses to 100 people. Pete helps manage those licenses. Pete buys more licenses. Pete does the renewal. Pete's the guy who's responsible for this relationship between Pluralsight. And we had to do a major rebuild of our experience. This is what it used to look like. Actually, this is an interim solution. It's not quite as old as the computer suggests, but it was old. We had problems with it. Like, one, we're talking about data that we're providing to our users, and the data wasn't always accurate, nor was this solution scalable for our customers, for our users, for Pete. So we had to make a major investment in this, and that's what we're going to talk about. That's what I'm going to walk you through. So I'm going to pause here, and this is where I said I was going to talk about research. So let's just make an assumption, a few assumptions. One, we know who our persona is. Two, we've done our research, we've talked to them. Three, we've done our designs, and we've tested them vigorously. And trust me, we did. We talked to a lot of people. This is our MVP. We were replacing a piece of functionality that existed. We didn't have the luxury of doing incremental releases and building something new. So this was a complete teardown of something that existed, people had used, had grown accustomed to, and we had to build them something that was of parity. It had to be the same. And for us, it was the General Lee flying through the air. And if you guys remember the show, the General Lee is always flying through the air. So it was really exciting. This is how we release at Pluralsight. There are 3 stages. And this is how we released our reports. We have pre-alpha, we have alpha, and then we have beta. The timeline between start to finish varies. It depends on what's happening. And you'll kind of be able to see the changes and the shifts that we make through this experience or this process. But it's important to note that in each of these segments, pre-alpha, we let in a certain percentage of customers or users. In alpha, we add more to that. In beta, we add more to that. and I'll walk you through the exact numbers of how we do it and how we did it with this big change that we did. These are the reports that we released in each of these cycles. Now, we didn't build everything out and throw it out to the marketplace. We did it incrementally. So it took time, and in between each of these stages, we were building what was next. So we released pre-alpha. While we were watching the feedback from our users come in, we're developing what's happening in alpha, so on and so forth. Now, I also want to say that it's really important for our users. These reports are critical for our users because these are the reports that justify renewal. These are the reports that justify expansion. So when Pete bought those 100, he wants to make sure it's being used. So we really had no room for error in all of this. Let's take a look at pre-alpha. But before we look at the actual report and the design and all of that cool stuff, this is how we get our users into our experience. It's an opt-in. So we've got our persona, we got 17,000 Petes. We've got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of other kinds of users. But we have only 17,000 Petes. And so we have to incrementally let users into our experience. And this is how we do it. They land on the dashboard. We give them the option to opt in. If they want to opt in, cool. If they don't, that's fine too. If they opt in, they want to opt out, they have that option. A fun little stat, through this entire experience, we had 0 people opt out. Something as a product manager I've never experienced. It was, I think, a testament to a lot of the hard work that the team had done. If they opt in, we present them with some basics about what they're about to see. So here, this is, hey Pete, this is what you're about to see. We follow that up with some basic app queues. If you guys have used app queues, it's a very simple tool, easy to drop little app queues on there and describe basic functionality, which is what we did. And this is the report. This is what our users were seeing. You can see across the top, basic nav. It's kind of maybe a little bit hard to see, but you can see that we're starting to indicate the reports that are going to be coming next. So this is the user's report. But at the top, you can see we've got content coming, we've got usage, we've got code school, and then we've got legacy reports, just in case they want to get back, because they're new. These guys, there's only 1,000 people there. And this is the report. We've got basic filters up to the top right, a graph here that shows your leaderboard, who's your best users. You've got aggregate information, and all the detail is right here. We let in 1,000 users. This is 5% of our customer base. We let them in, and then as soon as we hit 1,000, we cap it, and we listen to their feedback. And this is how we do it. It's a simple tool. It's called WebEngage. It's easy to install. It's probably the easiest product that we evaluated to install, but it's very, very simple. We do 5-star rating. So our goal is to be at 4 stars. If we're at 4 stars, things are great. If they're not, we stop, we look at what's happening, evaluate it, maybe pivot, and then re-release. We give them the option to provide additional information, and trust me, they do. You're going to hear some of the feedback that our users provided to us in just a few minutes. We also ask them for their email. With such a small user base, it's possible for me to reach out, and I do, to every single user that provides a comment. If you give a comment, unless it's like, Kyle, you're the greatest, or Kyle, I want to kill you, you don't get an email. But if it's a suggestion, they get an email from me, and we start a conversation. This is a really great way to engage with your user base and identify people to talk to in the future. You start to build these relationships with your users. It's easy for me now to pick up the phone and call somebody and talk to them. Our feedback rating in pre-alpha on our first report was 4.3. This is a really good score, at least relative to what we've experienced in our user base. So we're above our 4. Our 4-star is our threshold for moving forward. We're feeling really happy. Things are great. And this is what our users had to say.
This is perfect. Thank you.
For my team managers, can you just show me what my team is doing by courses and time range?
No ability to view courses by users? This report is almost useless.
So those are not our users. Those are actually the developers who are reading the customer feedback. Those guys are the team that actually built these reports. And I've got a few more of those. I didn't include all of the developers, but you'll see some other feedback like that here in just a few minutes. So we aggregate. At that point, we've got a lot of information that's come in from our user base, and they're saying, Kyle, we want this, Kyle, we want that. We aggregate that information. We look for repeatable data. We look for what is it that they actually truly do want us to add to this or change, modify. They were asking for content reports. And this is where my mind was blown away, because we were just a couple days away from releasing this. We had anticipated this. We knew that our users were going to ask for this. And in our breakdown and all of our research and all of the discussion around how we build and what we release and when we release it, it was really paying off at this point. We had done so much pre-work, we kind of anticipated we were ahead of them, and it felt really, really good. So we move into alpha. Pre-alpha's out there, people like it, we're ready to release the next thing. The next thing's going to be content reports, and here they are. And you can see the top nav, things are starting to disappear. Legacy reports is still there, same basic layout, same basic styling, different kinds of data, different colors, but the same essential kind of report. We now have added another 1,000 users to our experience. So our pre-alpha users are still with us. They're still experiencing these old reports. Now they're checking out the new ones. And our score drops. So this is where we were really confused and frustrated. Why did this happen? I don't understand it. We got a 4.3 in pre-alpha. Our customers said they want content reports. We gave them content reports and our score goes down? That doesn't make any sense. I still haven't figured it out. And trust me when I say I spent a lot of time trying to understand why our score went down. Was it just kind of an anomaly? I have no idea. I don't know. Let's take a listen to what our users were saying to us, though.
It is gorgeous.
I can't find where to export the data to Excel. I need a view of the users per team.
I can no longer get a download of usage by an individual. This inhibits my ability to tell the Pluralsight ROI story.
That guy is a great developer. So we aggregate our data, and we're looking for that repeatable data again. Like we're in our second release, we're trying to figure out, why did the score go down? What are they asking for? They're asking for the ability to export the data. They want to be able to take this data that they can see visually in the UI, and they want to aggregate it in some kind of Excel document, massage the data, and start to tell that return on investment story for their organization. They want to start to justify Pluralsight to their organization. They want to see how Pluralsight Reports and that experience for them is going to change, because this is key to their survival of keeping Pluralsight an ongoing product in their organization. Score's still at 4, so we're feeling good, kind of. So we go to beta. We're ready to give it to more users. And this is the final report. You can see up here top right, that's where we give download reports. And earlier I said we had really anticipated what our users were asking for. This was by design. We anticipated this one yet again. So again, I think it was a testament to the experience of going through directed discovery and really talking to our users, understanding what they wanted, and knowing what to release, when to release it, how to release it. This report tells our users also, it gives them kind of an overview of how their license allocation is looking, how much usage. This is a really high level, super admin kind of view. We add 1,000 users. Now we're at 3,000. We're up to 17% of our user base. This is our last release before we go to production. Now, somewhere around 15 usually is what some of the other product teams at Pluralsight are doing or targeting in their beta group. It kind of varies depending on the persona, but this is typically what we hit. In this case, we actually left the cap open, so we didn't cap it. We let people continue to add themselves to our pre-production states, which was this one. Our score goes up slightly, so we're still above 4. We're feeling really good at this point. In fact, we're running from the law. This is what our users are saying to us, though.
I really don't like the color. But other than that, it's okay.
I'd really like to know what hours of the day people are watching content.
I need to be able to track usage per user on a monthly basis. Your changes have made this a nightmare.
Now, I went through each section, and I picked out somebody that gave good feedback, somebody that gave okay feedback, but constructive feedback, and then I picked somebody who was angry. And if there's one thing I've noticed about our user base, about all of the Pete's that we represent and work for, is that that's typically what you're going to get in the qualitative feedback. You're going to get somebody that's elated. You're going to get somebody that is okay with it but wants more. And then you're going to get somebody that's really mad, somebody that doesn't like you anymore. We aggregated all the feedback from our beta users. So this is our last stage. This is where we're going to make our changes if we have to make any additional changes. They wanted custom dates. This was something we knew was going to happen, but we didn't know if we wanted to make the investment. We were waiting for the actual information to come in before we made this investment because it was going to be a little bit heavy. So that's exactly what we did. That was the only change we had to make before we went to production, was just to add the ability to customize a date range when they ran a report, rather than give them kind of like a canned report date time period. Before we go to production, though, we start to really dig into the data. We want to understand more than just a qualitative and quantitative data set. So we review it in totality. So we've got our pre-alpha, alpha, and then beta. We take a look at that. Is there anything that we're missing? Have we missed anything? We use Woopra. It's a great tool. It gives you a really super in-depth view of what your users are doing. And you can see here, this is kind of basic traffic. This is just a graphical representation. It's a lot more detailed than what you see here, but this is what it looks like. And you can see the traffic between the reports. Some really interesting things. We anticipated that the content report would be the most popular. And it's not. It's the least popular. But we're just a few days into this, and our users are getting accustomed to this, which means our users are clicking around a lot, and they're just getting familiar. So I don't believe that in the long term that these stats are going to stay consistent. I think they're actually going to change. I think we're going to see a drop in usage. We're going to see an increase in content traffic, and I think users is going to be a report that's always going to be popular. We also look at other data. We don't localize Pluralsight. So taking a look at your geographical ratings is something that we just recently started doing. We want to know and make sure that our international users understand this. Historically, we never really looked at this, at least I didn't. And I always felt like the international users were more harsh in their feedback. But for some reason, they weren't. Maybe it's because this is data, and data translates to maybe all languages. I'm not sure. But there was nothing alarming here, whether it's domestic or international users. And we look at browsers. Well, we all know Safari users are happy. And we all know that Explorer users just use Explorer. So no surprise. But we didn't see anything that was wrong. And we did find one bug. I think it was, I believe it was a Firefox bug, and we fixed it. But Anyway, nothing that really kind of jumped out to us. So as Cooter Davenport is indicating, everything is good. We're ready to go to production. We've done our homework. We've released it incrementally. Our users are saying they want it. Now we're going to turn it on for all of our users. Now, some organizations like to run 2 production states in parallel and let users opt into these experiences over a long period of time, adopt them over time. We didn't have that luxury. We had to deprecate some of our experience. It was just too heavy for us to not just continue to support technically, but also support on the sales and support side. We had to get everybody to the same experience, so we were all looking at the same data set. So we go to production, and this is where we start to measure differently. This is where, as you heard Mariah speak earlier, we start to measure things like NPS. It's kind of a hard screen to look at here, but we look at NPS on a monthly rolling basis. So right now, our NPS is 63. I think actually this is an average for the entire organization. I believe our persona, last I saw it, was closer to 70. And I think this is a good point to kind of stop and suggest that directed discovery has affected the NPS score at Pluralsight. A year ago, our NPS was 43, 42, and now across the board it's 63. This is an incredible measurement. And the fact that we as a product team have had and the development team have had on our users' experience is starting to get measured. And these are the metrics that we're going to start to look at. Now, the reports that we released them 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, actually. We don't know the effect of NPS from the reports that we built. We believe it's going to go up. Otherwise, we've not done our job. However, we don't know that just yet, and we'll know it next month. And I can't wait to see the effect, to see the impact. These are other metrics that we're starting to look at. You can see subscribers versus active learners. You can see that we want to close that gap. Each of those vertical bars represent major releases for Pluralsight over the last year. The yellow ones are more for Pete, who is the persona that I work for. The blue ones are for the learners, which are for a gentleman we call Devin. Christine also is in there. We're also looking at view time, and you can see that our view time has gone up. Monthly courses watched, another important metric. We're constantly adding courses to our library, but we also want to engage. We want those users to watch as many courses as possible. Yet another metric that we're looking at, and you can see major growth for us here. Visits per user per month has not grown, but that doesn't mean we stop looking at it. It's not like we run or hide from this metric or any other metric that doesn't look good for us. Average duration of visit. So how much time does Pete or does Devin or Christine, when they come to our site, how much time do they spend there learning? How much time did they spend there administrating? You can see there was a spike at the start of the year. We're not sure exactly why, but we've got a hunch that the culprit was the holidays, and also the fact that organizations tend to move from project to project at the start of the year. And so this is a great time of the year for users to skill up and get ready for that new tech stack they may be working on. So what have we learned today? Well, I hope that you learned that when you're making changes to your product, to know and understand your risks. Know exactly what's at stake. Because if it's a core piece of your product, like it was Bo and Luke was core to the Dukes of Hazzard, it could have a devastating effect to your product. And while you're making those changes, listen closely to what they're saying. I hope also for all of those designers here, I hope that you learn that the packaging of the product that you work on and that you care about so much, follow it through. get involved in that release process. Trust me, when as a product manager, I want you there. Like, we want you to come join us. We want you to help us. Because if you don't, you run the risk of that time where Bo and Luke came back and Coy and Vance had to say this really awkward goodbye. And with that, I want to say thank you very much for your time.